If there is a God, give me a sign. See, I told you.
This content is for education and facilitating self-empowerment. However, this platform exists to cultivate an addictive and abusive codependent relationship with a vapid materialist pop culture while data scraping algorithms sync your personal metadata onto pattern maps used to anticipate then invert emergent trends in our collective evolution of consciousness in an effort to compromise our ongoing mass awakening. I just thought you should know about that. Welcome to Symbols, Patterns, and Gnosis. As always, it's Jason Bickford. The Lord of the Rings creator, J.R.R. Tolkien, was a Christian esotericist and a student and professor of history and language. Tolkien fans, not so much. So they are missing out on some patterns I wanted to unpack a little bit further. I've got an excerpt in this video about the Shedim, which is a Hebrew word for demons, and these are disembodied spirits, kind of live in a parallel world, but can be made visible. Even an atheist nation like Iceland has the hidden people, or the Huldafolk, and we have this battle going on symbolically in which human beings are stuck in a precarious position between dragons and Snowguard, one world and another, and a kind of purgatorio in between in which fire and ice create a water world. Sauron backwards is no Ruas, which reminds me of that Owen Barfieldian concept of the fossils of consciousness and using etymology to psychologically excavate the archaeology of the conscious evolution through the language and our relation to it. So Ruach and breath and spirit and wind are all one word. We're being led into an age of too much information and too much bad information, and that's bad dope. We have the oil spill, or the tar, and manteca, tar in Spanish, is a popular slang term for heroin. I grew up in Western Mass near one of the heroin capitals of the country, and there's a never-ending supply of bad information. We are doing to our bodies what we are doing to the planet, and we are dredging up some old patterns, and that's kind of like bringing up the reptile brain. We're told those fossil fuels come from the great dinosaurs. So we have a cultural climate change because we're tapping into the ego monster, and that's the same thing as creating a Jurassic Park. And this story goes round and round. I've talked about the importance of stable carbons, 6 protons, electrons, and neutrons, and that is the P-E-N, the pen, and it's mightier than the sword.
On one side fought an elven warrior. The heart as pure as Manwë, poured all his light into the tree to protect it. On the other, a Balrog of Morgoth channeled all his hatred into the tree to destroy it. Amidst their duel, unending, lightning ensnared the tree. Forging of their conflict, a power.
A power as pure and light, as good, as strong and unyielding as evil. They say it seeped down the roots into the mountain depths where for centuries now it has waited.
Are you the prophet we await? He answered, no. Then who are you, they asked.
The recent Amazon series, Rings of Power, reminds me of that, of the initials there, R-O-P. And I think of rite of passage. You're at the end of your rope. You need a hand, or an E, the 5th letter of the alphabet. I think of the hand as a symbol for the letter E and the number 5. And so we have the rite of passage. We could use a hand. But children are increasingly being raised by pop culture. They do not have the guidance of parents and grandparents and family culture in a more deeply rooted culture than they used to. More than ever, there's teenagers coming of age, growing up on the internet and in low-income areas where a communal gang culture supplants the collective wisdom of the family or the larger culture they come from. And again, deracinated means having the roots pulled out, so their family tree has been removed and replanted somewhere, or they're little cuttings from a larger family tree that are now uprooted and put somewhere else. And this keeps them from going through a proper rite of passage that's embedded in the collective wisdom of the culture. And we see that playing out in the pop culture with the Shedim corrupting the youth and leading them on wild goose chases of this dualistic and polarized back and forth battle between kind of hyperbolic and extreme ideas that are somewhat rooted in the truth. I like to call that the truth bread shit sandwich. At a glance, looks phenomenal, and then you take a bite and you're like, wait a minute. This pop culture is nothing more than a kind of neo-paganism, a collective communism that allows us to give ourselves away to the lowest common denominator that's charismatic and rooted in razzle-dazzle and false gnosis. Freud wrote about this in group psychology and the analysis of the ego. And so did John Steinbeck in his own way in the novel A Dubious Battle.
Hey, Doc? Doc? Hello, anybody home? Einstein, come here, boy. What's going on? Oh, God. Oh, Jesus. That is disgusting.
So before I play this excerpt from a longer video and then get into what the Kabbalists are up to, I just want to point out that Eminem is a perfect example of the teenageification of the culture. He's a whiny kid that doesn't stop talking about his girlfriend and his problems with his mom. So he sounds like a teenager into his late 40s. It's kind of puerile and childish, and that's the snare of the Shedim that the kids get hooked on. And they're warned about it in Psalm 106, but they'd rather watch 106 and Park. Slender Man and the Slim Shedim are manifestations of the same spirit. So here's that excerpt. And so we've got young men and women who are possibly gay, definitely increasingly narcissistic, and they're being told that there's magic pills and hormones they can take to become like the celebrities on the TV. And if they just blather about their problems on the internet enough, they'll become celebrities. It's kind of like the Eminem effect, right? Just be a whiny little bitch. Keep running your mouth. Someone's going to give you money for being a verbal martial artist. So the narcissists are coming out of the closet. The Slim Shedim is the ego monster. Shedim being a Hebrew word for demon. That's in Park 106 in Park. Oh, Psalm 106 in Park. Here's what everybody missed with the viral resemblance of Slim Shady to the demons in the Lord of the Rings series, Rings of Power. That is the Slim Shedim, or the demons in Hebrew, Shedim being Hebrew for demons. We see them in Psalm 106 and Park. That's Bad L rap. 106 and Park? Oh, Psalm 106 and Park, right? Where we disabuse ourselves of the rock and give ourselves up to the snare. And that becomes a problem when the Slim Shedim, Slender Men come and we give our children away. So yeah, we've been warned about this in Jewish and Christian scripture, to not sacrifice our children to demonic and spiritual warfare. And that's what we're doing. You're giving your kids away to social media influencers. You're disabusing yourself of your natural born rights as a parent to provide guidance and love for your child, because you don't want to be seen as maybe intolerant or stifling or being some kind of homophobe or transphobe. So when your gay daughter thinks she's a boy because being gay isn't cool or edgy enough and the hormones are raging, don't give them more. What's the matter with you? So Eminem's lyrical content over his career is an embodiment of the spirit of the age, the Bad L rap. constantly fighting and insulting people. I mean, he picked a fight with Moby, the vegan techno guy that doesn't even say anything and just makes techno beats. You got to be kidding me. So, I mean, it's an abusive kind of mentality that's programmed into kids to constantly talk shit. And where are their parents to correct them? Well, they're engaged in the same behavior because this pattern is embedded in the way in which we have political discourse as well. In Fyodor Dostoevsky's The Devils, we see a society possessed by this collective spirit of Ahriman, or the meme-think infection. And it's a hyper-left-brained Legion's air disease. And we could think of air disease as in the heir to the throne as well. Everybody wants to put a tiara or a king's crown on, and that's the coronavirus, or the pirate's COVID. Here's how the Kabbalists do it.
So first of all, we ourselves have to grow stronger ourselves, and to bestow onto the ego, to bring them the light. And after, we ourselves will be corrected. And that's it. And this is how you correct the entire world. But our mission, it's actually, we're not from here. We're from here. Israel, in their root. And then we went this way and got inside. By the shattering of the vessels. By the shattering of the soul.
You know, the idea of Darwinian evolution's fight for survival of the fittest only doesn't quite apply here on the planet when you consider that this fight and quest for survival is mitigated by an intelligence. That would be here on the planet, as far as we know, just, you know, on the surface level, it would be human intelligence. I believe there's a spiritual intelligence, but we don't have to call into that. We'll just say, you know, okay, there's human intelligence on the planet, so what's going on with the food chain? Well, there's plenty of animals, say dairy cows, that would go extinct in the wild, in the natural habitat. Out in the world, they would become prey, and they'd get wiped out. So they're pretty fragile, and they wouldn't survive unless we had farms for them, because they'd wipe themselves out, or they'd get slaughtered by the world out there. And what if human beings are in a similar position, and they haven't gone extinct for the same reason that dairy cows haven't gone extinct, because farms exist.